Hello, my name is Beth Feinberg, and I'm a member of the HackThis experience team. Today, we are honored to be joined by Andrew Sutherland, the founder and CTO of Quizlet, who will speak about his journey. I'm going to hand it to you now, Andrew. Thank you.
Hey, thanks for the intro, and really glad to be here. So, do we have everyone on the stream? Yeah. Okay.
Yep, we're all set up and ready.
Okay. Cool. Yeah, my name is Andrew Sutherland, and I founded Quizlet. I thought it would be fun to talk about the journey of starting Quizlet because it's sort of relevant maybe to a time of high school and college because that's when I started it. Um, so I started Quizlet when I was 15 and I was a sophomore in high school. I had a really difficult French teacher whose name was Miss Selvin, and she had us doing lots of different things in her class. We had to memorize and recite poetry, and we had to write our own plays and perform them, and we cooked French food. And we also had a ton of grammar and spelling and vocabulary words that we needed to learn. And so uh, one night she gave us an assignment that was 111 French animals that we needed to learn. And uh, and I was getting my dad to quiz me on them and sort of shouting them back and forth. And he wasn't doing a very good job of keeping track of like which ones I knew and which ones I didn't. And so I decided to build a little tool that could keep track of what I knew and what I didn't, and just kind of keep testing me on the stuff that I didn't. And so, um, so I kept working on that and trying to just like build a very basic website that would do just that. And with the next French test that I had, I used that tool to study, and I got 100% on that test, which is the first time I'd ever done that before in her class. And I was like, oh wow, this is like a pretty powerful system. It can, help me better prepare for her class because it always knows exactly what I don't know. Um, and so, when I was first starting out Quizlet, it wasn't because I had some grand vision for reimagining education online or anything like that. It was a very sort of personal and practical need that I had for myself. And then I started sharing it with my friends in my class, and they all started getting much better grades in the class. And my teacher noticed because we were all coming to class much more prepared, and that meant we had more time to do interesting things like having dialogues in the class or something like that, because we knew all the vocab. And so over the next few years, I built it and got my friends to constantly just test it and see what features they wanted. And I was the biggest user of Quizlet myself, so I would be studying for her class or history or something like that and using Quizlet. And when I realized that there was something that was wrong or didn't quite work, I would put my books aside and program in a better version, and then I'd uh, get my books again and keep studying. And so that worked out really well. And in January 2007, I launched Quizlet so anyone could create their own sets and their own content. And um, and then from there, I was fortunate to get into MIT, partly because I had like built this cool thing that people were using, and I spent 3 years there studying computer science and working on Quizlet from my dorm while also, uh, trying to take classes and have a social life and stuff like that, which was really tricky. And then after 3 years there, I decided, made a difficult decision to leave early. I was loving my time at MIT, and I'm not someone who advocates for dropping out or anything, but in this case, it was sort of the right thing to do for me because Quizlet was growing really quickly. There were about 1 million people using it at that point. And it had all just grown by word of mouth. So students will find out about it and they'll tell their teachers. Teachers find out about it, tell all their students. It's sort of this natural thing where if one person creates some content, it's probably useful for 30 other students. So I built that and got that going. And then in 2011, I moved out to San Francisco to build up the company and start hiring people. And for the last 9 years, it's been growing mostly in San Francisco. Now we have an office in Denver and an office in London as well. And it's been a ton of fun. There are about 200 people now. And yeah, what else? Something that was always really important to me was two things. One was hackathons inside the company. So Quizlet started out with this sort of natural thing that was, I was kind of hacking around and playing with it. But then even inside the company, many of the best features that ever got built were built during hackathons when people sort of put down their normal schedules and their normal duties and would say, everyone's working on this thing all the time. And so they're thinking about ways it could be better all the time. And when you can sort of completely unleash people, they end up having really creative ideas. And so Quizlet Live, for example, if some people have played that, was built first during a hackathon. And a lot of our best features, honestly, were like, prototyped using hackathon time when you like can sort of put aside all the normal rules. So I think it's awesome that all of you have been doing this stuff, and it's a great way to like explore your ideas. And I've always loved programming because I can have some big idea and just make it materialize instantly. The other quick thing I wanted to talk about is education specifically. Building a business in education is kind of a tricky thing because there's there's a lot of people in it, which is good. There's hundreds of millions of people or even billions of people who are in schools or taking classes at any given time. But it's also sort of pretty regulated, and how stuff gets purchased is tricky. And so building like an online tech business in education has often been tricky. And one of the ways we made that work for us was by building something that students and teachers really loved and that they could buy just directly from us. And so we didn't, set up a sales force to sell to school districts or something like that. We just built something that people could pay for and subscribe to directly. And that was really successful for us. And so, that's kind of the main bullet points I wanted to talk about for Quizlet. I've been spending a lot of time recently thinking about education and education policy, not just as it pertains to Quizlet, but as we all know, education is kind of getting reinvented before our eyes right now with COVID and figuring out ways to make the money that goes into it more flexible, make teachers' lives better, have them be paid more and stuff like that are all things that I've been spending a lot of time on. And so would be happy to talk about that too if people have questions about sort of the bigger picture systems of education. I've been really lucky with Quizlet that because it's now 50 million people using it a month and it's just sort of this global phenomenon that everyone uses, I've been able to go to Finland and Germany and South Africa and China and see schools in a lot of different places and all over the US. And so I've been able to gain some perspective of what works in education and been sort of lucky to see a lot of different school environments. So happy to take any questions now if people have them. I think Beth maybe can shuttle them to me.
Yeah, thank you so much, Andrew. That was really interesting. Let's now begin the Q&A. Everybody, please make sure to submit your questions through the Slido link in the chat. Our first question is, what was one thing you wish you knew before you began your journey?
That's a great question. I would say one thing I wish I had understood better was sort of setting up companies and how to share ownership of a company. because that's not something that I really understood. And so, vesting shares, for example, is something that's a really important idea if you ever start a company. And that the basic idea there is that, if you have a business partner or you have employees or something like that, or even for yourself, you don't own all of your percentage of the company right away. You have to earn it over a period of time. So say 4 years or 5 years, like you sort of earn into your stake. And that way, if there are challenges or things that come up in the company, it's sort of easier to do the right thing on that stuff. And so, I made some mistakes early on that are, in the end, just totally fine. And but it could have worked out, maybe a little better if we'd done that better early on.
Great. So our next question is, how did you start getting users outside of your circle when you first started the project in high school?
Yeah. So I tried to get some blogs and stuff like that to talk about Quizlet, and no one was really interested. So there was no sort of overnight success for Quizlet. It launched in 2007 with about like 100 users who were just people who I knew from online or my friends, and so it really just grew organically. Like someone's cousin told them about it, and then someone's teacher told them about it. And if you do the math, it actually is kind of powerful. So if one teacher gets excited about it and realizes it's a useful tool for them, then they might have 100 or 150 students that they can all share it with. And then those 150 students use it for that class, and then they use it next year for a different class and tell their other friends about it. If a teacher gets really excited about it and they talk about it with 3 other teachers, they each have 150 students. And so if some teacher speaks at a conference and they tell a room of 500 teachers about it, then like you can really imagine how the numbers just multiply really quickly. And so I don't know if that works in all cases or for all kinds of products, but I do think that because Quizlet was free, because it was easy to use, because it was designed sort of with students at heart, where like it's just designed to be useful for students. It allowed that natural sort of growth to happen, and it didn't need to be forced.
Great. So our next question is, the person who submitted this said, not sure if it's NDA, but how has Quizlet's metrics / usage changed as a result of the pandemic? And what kinds of engineering challenges have resulted from that?
Yeah, I'm not sure too much we can say on that. But Quizlet is doing well. There's it's changed some things, obviously, like Quizlet Live I mentioned before is mostly designed to be used in classrooms, but when there aren't in-person classrooms, we had to change it to allow for sort of remote versions of it. And so it's certainly changed some priorities because sort of the setting where Quizlet is being used is different, but there's also sort of new settings or new people that are discovering it for the first time. And so sort of a lot has changed, but some is good and some is bad.
Great. Our next question is, how do you monetize an educational tool?
Yeah, so this is something we spend a lot of time thinking about. So Quizlet monetizes in 2 ways. It has ads and then it has subscriptions. And the ads are pretty straightforward. It's just Quizlet gets a lot of traffic, and so there's you put ads on the side of the page and it generates money. And we try not to be too overbearing about those because Quizlet is about learning, and if those get too in your way, then you're not going to want to use it anymore. And at the same time, we have a subscription thing, which gives you some extra features and if you're a sort of more deeper power user and you are using Quizlet a lot, it may make sense to spend some money on it. And something we've tried to do is make it relatively affordable and not charge a high monthly rate or anything like that. It's been designed to just sort of reach as broad an audience of possible people to pay as possible.
Our next question is, in the early days of the product, how did you motivate people to actually use it? So not organic growth, since the lack of adoption troubles lots of social apps.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the biggest reason that people used it was because it was useful to themselves. It's not necessarily something that you're trying to or with a social thing where it only works when all your friends are on it, and you have to create this sort of dynamic where everyone wants to see what everyone else is doing. Quizlet is at its core just really useful for one person. So if I'm studying for my French class or my Spanish class or whatever, I don't need my teacher involved. I don't need other students involved. I can just do it myself. Of course, it often gets better with more people on it, but we sort of, the core of one person using it and having it be good for them is sort of essential. That speaks to sort of a broader philosophy, which is Quizlet is a tool, and it's not something that people go on for fun. They're not like, oh, I'm gonna, spend my Saturday afternoon learning vocabulary. It's sometimes some people do that, but mostly people are using it to help them do better in class or to better understand something that they need to know. Because Quizlet is a tool, we succeed when it's useful and we don't succeed when it's not useful. It's not like a social app where we succeed because people spend more time on it. Quizlet has always just tried to be as useful as possible to people.
Awesome. So what were some failures you dealt with on the path to success with Quizlet?
Yeah. I would say we've certainly built a lot of products that didn't work out, or we had some idea of some new game or feature that we thought would be good and didn't. For example, we built this thing called long-term learning, and the idea was to have a spaced repetition system where people could sort of learn stuff over time. And that's sort of proven scientifically, at least, to be a better way for people to learn. And I think it actually still could work someday on Quizlet. And we already have some systems like that built into the main Quizlet. But we built this sort of separate feature that was just designed just for this. And it just, we didn't do enough user research on it or design it in a way that would fit in with a normal student or normal class's life. It was sort of more of a intellectual idea that was good rather than something that people really wanted or that would really fit into their life. I think when you get too far away from what people are solving a problem that people actually have, you can end up wasting a lot of time building stuff that people don't want. I think that's part of how Quizlet became good was we spent a lot of time visiting schools. We spent a lot of time talking to teachers, talking to students, being very sort of on the ground, talking to people, understanding how they're using the product, how it could be better. And that still sort of continues today. Yeah.
Earlier in the event, we had a speaker named Pamela Fox who spoke about the importance of making educational tools accessible to those with disabilities. Somebody is wondering, how does Quizlet accommodate for those people?
Yeah, well, Quizlet definitely spends time and money on accessibility and doing the work both in our apps and our website to mark up things, to make them easier for screen readers, or make it easier to navigate and stuff like that. I think it's something that's super important, and it's hard to get people to think about enough. So, for example, like what I was just saying with doing user research, like when you have people in an office and they don't have those same disabilities, and they're not like going out and meeting people that do, then you sort of end up using the product like how you would use it and not how other people would use it. And so one of the sort of central challenges of running a larger company is like getting people to focus on it. And so one thing that we've had success on is like, a few people in the company that are vocal about it and care about it, and giving them sort of the time and space to run with making improvements to the products, and making that part of their main job, not like an extra job that they have to also do.
Great. So my next question is, so if we have a prototype right now, what would you recommend to be the next step to grow?
Yeah, so I would say, get it in front of other people. I mean, the first person is like, is it useful for you? And in some cases, it's not always applicable. Like sometimes you build products that are for other people than yourself, but you need to find the people who are really going to get excited about it. And I would say, like, you need to find people who really love something and not just kind of like it. It's much better to have 5 or 10 users who really love something and can't live without it, than 100 users who are like, yeah, this is a good product. Like I might use it once in a while, because that sort of passion and drive is what's going to get something to grow and get talked about and stuff like that. So I would say, bring it to those, whoever your target people are, like bring it to them, and don't stop refining it or tinkering with it, or building something or changing it until you feel like you have people who are really excited about it and like just want to use it all the time, or like it really solves their problem.
So the next question is, what is your daily routine, and how do you manage work and living life, checking things off your bucket list and achieving good overall balance?
That's a good question. So, well, it's certainly true that like in the earlier days, like I didn't, live by a calendar or anything like that. And over time, I've gotten much more organized. And so being organized is a really key thing to like using your time well. So, just keeping a calendar, for example, recently I've gotten much better, like just in the last year, at taking notes and keeping track of my to-do list and actually getting it done. I've always sort of done some version of that, but this year I started using a tool called Roam, ROAM, which is a note-taking tool that it's kind of the first one that's a digital tool that's made sense for me. And so I think that's really cool. What else? I think it's just it's hard as like someone who's building something to have time for both creative time and like to-do lists and checklists and stuff like that, because I don't think that like Quizlet wasn't built successfully because I like checked off all the items on my to-do list every day. And the way you build something creatively is often you need many hours of uninterrupted time where maybe it's late at night, or maybe it's just in a separate room where there's not other people coming to you and trying to talk to you. And so, that kind of focus and like continuous flow is super necessary to creating something good. And so, there's a really good essay about this called maker time versus manager time. You can look it up. And there's been lots written about this kind of thing. But so I would say, like, yes, you need to be organized and you should probably be keeping a calendar and stuff like that. But like, if you go too far on that and you are just like, well, if I just do all these things and I am super organized with my time, then like I'll be successful. And like neither of those is really the right answer. Like you need to have time for yourself to be creative and be sort of free flowing and adjust and stuff like that. And you also, if you aren't like sort of good at following up on email or like checking off, basic life tasks, then like the rest of your creative time might get sort of screwed up. So yeah, that's what I'd have to say.
Awesome. Somebody is wondering, how different was it coding the original Quizlet program and working in a large team to develop it? Is today's Quizlet code still based off of that original code?
Yes. So yes, Quizlet's original code is still based on, or what we have now is loosely based on what some of the original code. Of course, it's been rewritten many times, and it's gotten a lot stronger and more useful for more use cases and stuff like that. I would say, there's trade-offs in the earlier times and the later times. So like Quizlet is now 200 people. There's tons of engineers who are building it and all working on it together, and that has a lot of advantages. So like someone mentioned accessibility. Like it's harder to work on or have the space to think about accessibility as deeply if you are just a few people. But you can have a full-time person working on that, or security, or some other thing when you're on a larger team. And so the sort of the strength or depth of what you're able to do is much higher when you're on a much bigger team. At the same time, like when you're on a smaller team, it's easier to sort of move a little more quickly, or you don't need as much coordination time. You don't need to spend as much time sort of having meetings and getting everyone on the same page about a strategy, for example. Like, in the early days of Quizlet, we could all sit around the lunch table and just talk about like, what we should do next week. And we didn't need to have sort of plans for, we're going to hit this by this quarter and stuff like that. But that doesn't work when you have 200 people and they all need to be coordinated in what they're building, and not have two teams building the same thing, or have one team building something that's actually going to hurt this other thing. So it does require a good amount of coordination and thought and planning going into like how to spend people's time well. And so yeah, there isn't one that's better than the other necessarily, but it's just sort of a process of growing up and maturing and becoming a strong company.
Great. Our next question is, how did you know you should drop out of college? And what advice would you give to somebody considering it?
Yeah, I mean, I knew because one, I had done 3 years, and so I'd gotten a lot out of it, and I knew that I would continue getting more, but but it wasn't like I spent 6 months and was like, it wasn't for me. Like I really did get a lot out of it. I think what happened with me in Quizlet is like Quizlet was up to about 1 million users. It was growing really quickly, and it sort of felt like this once in a lifetime opportunity where like if I were to seize it, I could really make something out of it. And if I were to wait a year, that the opportunity might pass, or like it might slow down, or some other people who are working on it might leave. And so I sort of looked at all that and I was like, you know what, like I'll regret it if I don't go for it. And so, but at the same time, if that hadn't been the case and it wasn't growing as quickly or it didn't feel as urgent, like I would have loved to have stayed. And I think it is valuable to finish your degree and stuff like that. So.
Great. So this is going to be our last question, and it's, what is the one thing that you would change about the college education system?
Um, well, man, where to start? I think I think I think there's a obviously a really big problem with cost, and that's something that probably not surprising that I would talk about, but um, the amount of debt that people have to go into to get a degree is really problematic and is really harmful to their futures. And so, and there hasn't in general been like a check on or like market factors that sort of push down the price. So it's only been going up. And so the dynamics in that system are really complicated and the incentives are really complicated, but that's, you know, it's great that more people are going to college and it's great that like financial aid is increasing. So, not everyone is getting tons of debt, but a lot of people are, and that's really problematic. So yeah, I would sort of go for that problem. But I've been spending more of my time on the sort of K-12 world than I have on the college side. So I don't know. I don't have like the one law that you could pass that would fix it all.
Thank you so much, Andrew. It was very interesting to hear your answers to all the questions. And thank you to everybody who listened. And please make sure to fill out the attendance form in the chat. The password for the form is HackThis.
Cool.
Thank you, everybody.
All right. Thanks for having me. It's fun.
Absolutely.
Yeah.